Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. Okay, let's finish off this Q&A session. So we had a little tangent at the dollar and let's continue.
If the Aptera is meant to be left outside to take full advantage of solar charging, how do you imagine it will hold up in a sudden afternoon hailstorm? I don't know if you've seen videos of our solar, but we actually have a hail simulator in an ice.
Okay, this is what they're talking about right here. And you see them shooting the hail balls at their solar panel that they made to test it. And they did all kinds of other testing on their panels. So that's one of the parts that they've done a lot of physical testing on. It's not just simulation, a lot of physical testing on, and that's what they're talking about. So hailstorms, I mean, unless they're, there's a very standardized test that they use with a certain size hail, with a certain speed, and they've engineered it to meet those specs.
Gun behind us. It shoots high velocity ice balls at the panels to test how the cells hold up over time. It is a standard test for household solar, the solar you have on your roof, ice balls coming down at speed in a hailstorm. And we've already tested for that and feel the Aptera will hold up very, very well.
Apparently there's a standardized test with like a 1-inch
Yep.
ice cube or ice ball and a specific velocity it has to be launched at through. So it does very well, and all of our panels have been tested against that.
Tesla superchargers. Since Aptera decided to use the Tesla plug, does this mean we can use any supercharger available? Not any supercharger available, but as of now, Tesla is opening up its network.
Yeah, so Tesla had to open up their network as part of an agreement with the US government to get money to build out their network. And we had, they started this magic dock thing where you can, it releases with an adapter that lets you use the CCS ports. But then Aptera is using a Tesla port or the NACS port. So the question is can you go to non-Magic Dock enabled superchargers and use the plug directly? Or are you gonna have to do this kind of roundabout thing where you like go do the Magic Dock and then get a CCS to NACS so you get two adapters into the thing? I think all of these questions are just theoretical until the thing is built and Tesla tells us how they're going to handle it. Because it's up to Tesla's software to decide how they're going to do it. Right now, their software has a charger non-Tesla, and that only works for Magic Dock operated ones, where you go like this. See, this guy will pull it out and it pulls out with this adapter, and then that plugs in CCS port. With an Aptera, you'd have to have it pull out either without the Magic Dock, or you'd have to get a separate CCS back to Tesla port to work in your Aptera. So that part is unclear until Tesla gives us guidance on how they're handling it. Now, in my opinion, if anyone's going to be allowed to use the Tesla network, Aptera would be a good vehicle because there won't be that many of them, and they'll charge very quickly because their batteries are small, so they won't take up the supercharger for very long. And you can charge the Aptera very quickly on the old superchargers, the versions 1 and 2 that don't charge as high an amp because the batteries are smaller and it doesn't require like 150 amp charging.
We can use our app and go charge our other EVs now at the Tesla network, and they're opening up more and more ports over time. We hope that by the time we're into production, we'll have access to a lot of that network, and it will, hopefully expand over time. We fought hard to get the Tesla plug in our vehicle because it was the smallest form factor, and we thought it was just the best engineering. We had 42,000 people, and now has opened up the
skip ahead.
Let's see. How are you dealing with road noise and sound from outside the car? Has this improved over your iterations? Yes. So a lot of the video that we have, in fact, all the video, virtually all the video we have are from alphas and a little bit of gamma.
Okay, so basically they go into talking about the fit and finish of the car and how the fit and finish of the CPC parts are going to be perfect, and that's true because we've seen the metal dies and they're like beautiful and the things are going to fit together great. There's like Sandy Monroe said, you don't have to worry about thermal expansion or anything like that because carbon fiber CFSMC parts don't have to deal with that. So they were kind of talking about road noise from a fit and finish perspective. And of course that's going to get way better. I think maybe the question that the person was asking was about the material itself, because we know that that honeycomb sandwich composite structure they had was absorbed sound a little better than metal and was also a little bit less thermally conductive, and so insulates you from temperature changes a little bit more. Now, those of you guys that have worked with forged carbon fiber or CFSMC, please let me know in the comments below. The videos I've seen, I've tried to find a good one, but I couldn't find a good one to show you guys. But the thing acoustically behaves a little bit between plastic and metal. It sounds a little bit more metallic than regular uh, composite parts and polymer parts. And so I think that it will conduct sound and reflect sound a little bit more. It'll behave a little bit more like metal than that honeycomb structure. So you could think of that as making the sound a little harsh. Now, I asked Jason Hill about this, and he just told me, "Hey, like, don't worry about it. You know, don't you think we've thought of these things?" And of course, they do think about these things, and these parts are in supercars, so I'm not too worried about it. But I think intrinsically the material itself is a little bit more acoustically reflective and uh, probably it gives you a little more sound than a plastic part, but it's probably less so than a metal part, and we're all driving around in metal cars basically, so it's probably an improvement over a metal body. Okay, so let's skip forward.
Having
And
it.
they're also doing higher volume stuff that they can't talk about too, but they do have
Yeah.
experience in the high volume as well, which is
Okay, so they were talking a little bit about CPC, running supercars and stuff. I found out that there is this other company called Zoox, which is making this robo-taxi, and their bodies are being made by CPC. And this is some video that they have. You can look on their YouTube page. They're doing a lot of simulation testing, and they have already started doing physical crash testing of their vehicles, which seems like it matches up very well with their simulation testing. And so I think that bodes well for Aptera. Aptera has done simulation testing. They have not done physical testing yet, but this is physical testing of the CPC bodies for their robotaxi, and it seems to correlate very well um, with their simulation testing. So this is another company, Zoox, which is making a robotaxi, that they have a contract with CPC to make their bodies, and their bodies are also CFSMC, and their vehicles do very well on the crash testing when they did the physical crash testing. And as you can see, they have very small crumple zones, and they still do well. And so Aptera has much bigger crumple zones, much less mass, so um, it should do at least as well.
why it's helpful for us.
Does Aptera have plans for other mobility solutions? Yeah, Jason Hill has ideated a bunch of amazing things that take advantage of aerodynamics, lightweight, super efficient powertrain, and solar power that could branch us out into almost any sector of transportation. But we want to go where we'll have the most impact to start. And we feel that the three-wheeled version of the Aptera will have the most impact on efficiency overall, and we want to concentrate on that and get that into production and build many variants of that, as we can into the future. Delivery.
Yeah.
Bell,
Our
Okay, so if you saw a timeline of their business plan a while back, they were talking about moving to a four-wheeled sedan and maybe a van, SUV type vehicle. It looks like and I always thought that was premature. I was like, let's get this thing into production and concentrate on that. And that looks like what they're doing. They're concentrating on the current Aptera Roadster, the three-wheeled Roadster, and they're going to do many variants of that. And so I think we're probably seeing more variants of that before they move the four-wheeled version, because the four-wheeled version is going to be just a whole nother level of regulations and things like that. And I think that's going to be much harder to do. So they are being more realistic about their timeline. That's what I'm getting from this, and kind of concentrating on that. But I think they still have plans to get to that. But I don't think that's happening anytime in the near future. And depending on how the market develops and how this thing goes, they may or may not ever get to that. This is just me reading into what they're saying.
yeah,
Okay, so let's skip forward to the next.
is adjusted by the computer and is proportional to speed. So you get
Steering influence at different speeds.
yes, the rate of boost is adjusted by the computer and is proportional to speed. So you get maximum boost in the parking lot when you're going slow, and I think virtually zero boost at high speed.
Is the
Okay, so someone asked a question about variable steering because of the yoke. I think the question that that guy is asking is, will there be variable ratio steering, as in when you turn it initially, the initial couple of degrees of turning the yoke, it doesn't turn the wheel very much. And then as you turn the wheel more, it turns the wheel even more. That way, you don't have to turn the wheel, you don't have to turn the yoke all the way around to do parking maneuvers. So Lexus has done something like that. Aptera will not have that. Aptera is a fixed ratio steering, but they have variable assist, variable. It's just like um, some of you guys have probably driven a manual steering vehicle before, and you know that like in a parking lot when the car's not moving, you have to put a lot of force into the wheel to make it turn. So power steering helps you with that. But when you're on the road and you're moving with a manual steering, you don't really need any assist. You can turn the wheel fairly easily. So that's what Aptera has. Aptera has power steering with variable assist. So like it'll boost you more in the parking lot and less at speed. And that's pretty standard for vehicles. So that's nothing revolutionary, but they're not going to have variable ratio. I've asked that question multiple times to, I believe I asked Chris and I asked the steering person when I was at Fully Charged. It's a mechanically linked with a fixed ratio.
Aptera 500-pound weight limit because of structural concerns, suspension, or efficiency? How much are you going to limit the weight? We haven't done a lot of testing on this because we need to have the kind of the final validation version of the vehicle, but we've stated kind of 500-pound cargo and passenger capacity. That means two 150-pound passengers and 200 pounds of cargo in the back.
Now that's an optimistic view in the current light of the average size of Americans right now. I think 150 pounds, so two people averaging 150 pounds, was true in America in the 1970s. That is probably not true in 2023. The amount of obesity in the United States is quite high and gets higher every year. So I would say the average weight of American is greater than 150 pounds at this point, probably closer to 200 is my guess. And then so with that, you're gonna have less cargo space.
You know, the Aptera is very weight sensitive because it's a very lightweight vehicle, a 2,200-pound vehicle. If you add another, 800 pounds to it, it becomes a much different kind of vehicle in terms of, suspension dynamics and drivetrain power and all that stuff. So the Aptera is more weight sensitive than other vehicles, and that's just a fact of being the most efficient vehicle out there. Every 30 pounds of weight you add to the Aptera, you can lose 1% of range. So.
Okay, so I'm guessing that that percent of range is kind of off the cuff. I don't know that it's an exact number, but yeah, I mean, obviously, the heavier the vehicle is, you're gonna lose range. You just put more stuff on it, and because Aptera is light, your weight matters more. Like the percentage of your weight affecting the Aptera is going to be much more than the percentage of your weight affecting like a Hummer EV that weighs like 10,000 pounds. Um, so maybe this is also a good impetus for us to get more efficient, like our weight get lighter so that we can be more efficient in the Aptera. But what this makes me think is they're definitely going to have to redesign the suspension and stuff for the 600 and 1,000 mile range vehicles, because the 1,000 mile range vehicle is going to weigh like probably close to 800 pounds more just in battery weight than the 400-mile range vehicle. So I don't know how they plan on doing that, but yeah, it looks like 500 pounds is still the weight that they're targeting in their engineering specs. Now, we all know you can always load up your car more, but then it'll be out of spec and the suspension and the handling is going to be different as you weigh it down more. Because, I remember I had like a Ford Ranger truck, and I think that thing is not supposed to carry too much weight in the bed. And I went to Home Depot and got a bunch of flooring for my house, and like it was probably not a safe thing to do. The shocks in the bed were bottomed out, and I drove really really slow home. So I mean, you could probably do stuff like that, but you probably don't want to exceed the specs too much on the 500 pounds, which is their engineering specs.
We will probably limit the weight capacity of the Aptera more than other vehicles would, because when you weigh 6,000 pounds, you don't really care about how much extra cargo you have. So that's just kind of a fact of us being a very, very efficient vehicle. But we'll give you more guidance on that as we get to validating these vehicles, as we get closer to production, and the numbers may change on that.
Yeah, and so me personally, I like it that they're making it really light and and designing it for a light cargo capacity, mainly because well, for me it works out pretty well for me because I'm probably on the lower than average weight person in America, and I just want maximum efficiency. So, and if they make it for higher cargo capacity, they're gonna have to over engineer it and make the thing heavier.
Uh,
So I think that's a good design choice for me personally.
Last one, how has supply chain or inflation affected the Aptera price, comma, or will it?
Yeah, the supply chain was a bit of a nightmare last year for sure. Since we announced pricing in March of 2019, I mean, just inflation on most of the components that we have gone up 30%. So, those things will be sorted out as we get closer to production and we sign master supply agreements with a lot of these suppliers. The big things that have been really variable is the cost of the battery cells. Last year, a lot of the manufacturers are seeing huge spikes in aluminum, copper, and a lot of the materials that make the battery. So, and the battery is the most expensive thing in our bill of materials. So, we want to sign a master supply agreement with someone that feels comfortable with long-term pricing, and we feel that the picture of that has just totally changed in the last, 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot different conversation last year, and now we're having much more positive conversations with much more, vendors about future pricing. So we do think there are certainly impacts, and we'll advise on pricing, warranty, and all that as we get closer to production. But we think that will take a while longer to sort out.
Right, like we had two vendors actually in Europe who have revised their pricing upwards because of the energy costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that they're not getting gas from Russia, so their power plants get gas from other places, it's more expensive, so electricity's gone up, in some cases a factor of 3. Now, will that be the case when we start delivering vehicles? Maybe not, but at the moment it is, and so we'll have to look at the pricing and how that's reflective of it.
Okay, so they said that a lot of their suppliers have gone up 30%, and that's no news to us. Like we've all experienced inflation. We know that, going out to eat is ridiculously expensive now. And like groceries are expensive, housing is more, everything's gone up. So that's not surprising that Aptera's suppliers' costs have gone up and they're passing that price down. So I think that they are going to have to increase the price somewhat. And I don't know if they want to like honor the price for the initial people that have reserved and then raise it for people afterward, or they're going to raise it a little bit right now and more for the people afterward. Who knows? I have no idea what their plans are, but they did send out a recent survey, kind of trying to get a feel for how much price increase people are willing to deal with. Now, they said an interesting thing is one of the things that they said is the largest bill of materials is the battery price. And if you look at lithium prices over the past couple of years here, you can see right here, this is the price of lithium, and it bottomed out at the end of 2020, and then you see in 2021, and then especially in 2022, it ramped up like crazy. And see, this was like November of 2022. That's when it hits peak, and then you see this has dropped precipitously back down to like 2021 levels. So that's good. So I think that the commodity price of the battery materials is coming down, and I expect to see probably there may be more downward pressure on lithium prices as sodium batteries kind of start coming online. CATL has already started producing the sodium batteries, and sodium batteries have a lot of advantages. One of them being cost. It does have some disadvantages as well, but sodium is a lot cheaper than lithium for sure. And then the other thing, like Aptera uses NMC batteries, nickel, manganese, uh, cobalt, and cobalt prices similarly went up in 2002 and have similarly come back down to kind of their baseline price. So cobalt is getting cheaper, lithium is getting cheaper. So it looks like I think battery prices will get better and cheaper. So maybe that's one of the things that won't change that much. They initially, when they said their price, it was like 2000, they based it off of 2019 prices, which is around here. And you see, compared to that, the price of lithium like went up almost sixfold back, and then it's back down. So it's almost, now it's just like double. So it's a huge change in the lithium prices. And then in the cobalt prices in 2019 are about the same as they are now. So that's kind of good news.
Yeah, you end up with some manufacturing master supply agreements with suppliers that have some flexibility for that, and we see that as just kind of the future of the industry. So, fundraising accelerator, is there a tiered funding plan, or do you have to hold off on Aptera?
We don't have
We're basically working on a multi-pronged approach
Right.
to funding, which is equipment financing, which is debt, which is equity financing, not just from the crowdfunding, but from other larger investors, big funds, institutionals, grants, and big loan programs like the DOE loan program. We think all of those together will be key pieces in getting this vehicle into production. I would love to have an inspired billionaire walk through the door and hand us a very large check, and we can just execute it on everything, all at once. But we don't need to spend all of our money at once.
Right. It's about, I think, most of the capital is spent over a 6-7 month window.
It's like 9 months where
Yeah.
we spend, most of the capital that we need for production. And yes, if we're able to raise $50 million tomorrow, that takes care of a big chunk of the early spend. So when this accelerator program started and we started bringing in funds from the accelerator program, we started immediately deploying that, and that's a good chunk of what we need to get to production. And hopefully we'll double the amount that we've raised with that accelerator program or more, as people get excited about earning the top spots over the next few months. And if that becomes a $30 million chunk, then great. That's amazing progress. And will be added into the other pieces, debt financing and grants and loans, and all that will come together for the production equipment and tooling that we need in the factory here.
Why are
So yeah, it's pretty clear that they have not found a whale investor yet, and because I think we would hear about that. I don't think that's something that they would keep a secret. I mean, the identity of the large investor may be maybe they want to keep it a secret, but the fact that they have funding, I think they would announce that fairly quickly. And we haven't heard it. And again, they're saying that we'd like to have an inspired billionaire come in. Um, and it looks like the 50 million isn't sufficient in and of itself. They said that's a large chunk. And they also talk about uh, debt financing. And what that means is like I think like with their AGVs like Red Viking and other these large suppliers, what they're doing is they are kind of like getting a mortgage on a house. They are borrowing from the company. They're getting financing from the company to buy or lease those large pieces of equipment. So it's kind of a like they said, a multi-pronged approach. They're using some cash, some debt, some fundraising, that kind of thing.
accelerators given delivery priority over those who invested prior to the accelerator program?
Yeah, so I think some people feel like that's not fair because people got in really early and were part of the Paradigm Edition, and the accelerators are jumping the gun. And we had a pretty um, lively discussion on Discord about that. But I mean, I think the bottom line is that without the accelerators, no one's getting their Aptera. So eventually, everyone's getting their Aptera sooner because of the accelerators helping out get to production. It's like without them, maybe you'll never get to production. You'll never get a car. So would you rather get a car after the accelerators, or would you rather never get a car? Or would you rather get a car in like 3-4 years because you don't want the accelerator program happening, or would you rather get it in a year or two? And I think it's some people find that unfair, and I guess if you look at it a certain way, it might be, but practically, I think it's better for everyone. And that's what they basically.
We see the value of those first 2,000 production slots is just something that people, you know, it has real value to get one of the first 2,000 Apteras. They'll be the first solar mobility on the road. You know, and you know, you look at other kind of limited edition vehicles, the Tesla Roadster and others. You know, they've had, you know, great value as those companies have grown. So, you know, it was a mechanism to get more funding to accelerate our path to production, and it was kind of a gift to people that can jump in and support us in that way. Also a gift to our larger investors, because if you invest $10,000 in the accelerator program, we add your previous investment too. So for those previous people that have invested, you know, considerable money into Aptera, it was a way to kind of get them into the first 2,000 production slots by allowing them to use their previous investment in that. So it was kind of a two-pronged approach, where we thought it was kind of rewarding previous investment, but also energizing more capital into the equation.
That's good. Maybe one more.
One more. Let's see. East Coast, 26. Okay, there are 26 European accelerators, mainly German, Netherlands, and EU and Switzerland. Will Aptera assist those accelerators to ship those Aptera together in Europe? We are homologating in Switzerland first. There's a lot of reasons for that, but we've engaged a local company there. We're working with them to try and establish a beachhead, although Switzerland doesn't really have any beaches, so that's maybe a bad analogy, but we're establish a presence there first, again, for a variety of reasons, and then from there begin homologation through the EU.
I think most of the remaining questions were production start timing, really.
Okay, so I looked into homologation. There's this company that does homologation services for Switzerland, and they said a national approval document is required if you put more than 5 vehicles of the same type onto the market. And I wonder if this is the company that they're partnering with. I don't know, and I have no idea why they picked Switzerland. They have various reasons, but it looks like if you're in Switzerland, that's where they're going to get the first homologation. Now, I think if you're just importing one vehicle, there's like a back way around it, and you can do it individually. But if they want to actually set up a presence, you have to homologate. And this is a company that does it, and I don't know if this is the company they're using.
Really, when will we be able to start production? You know, if we find a large investor soon, it takes about 9 months to stand up the rest of the assembly line, as Pablo would say.
Okay, so it's 9 months from when they find this large investor. So still haven't found the large investor. It is May, so best case scenario, we're looking at early 2024, looks like.
And have vehicles flowing. So that's what we're looking at in terms of timing. A lot of the long lead timing could really catch us up. The body tooling, especially from CPC, you know, could take more than a year to produce those molds and commission them and get them into production. But we started that last year, so that won't be a holdup. But you know, really, the next gates are you know, finishing the ED&T and validation with a lot of suppliers for those parts. And as we finish that, we'll be able to kind of kick off those parts, you know, get the supply agreement signed and have delivery dates for those parts. But I would say, you know, if everything goes well and we secure funding quickly, it's about 9 months from when we secure funding to stand up the assembly line. And then, you know, obviously you have to turn the machine on and validate those lines and then really get in production. So, you know, we're pushing the timeline because we, you know, have funding needs to get all this done, and we understand that everybody out there wants their Aptera as quick as possible. And you know, we've been humbled by your support and continued understanding that these things take time, and we haven't been blessed by that inspired billionaire yet. But we're working hard to improve the vehicle, you know, as we have kind of more time to do so. And
I think that's an important point, and that's the kind of thing I asked Nick Rocco about, and I've talked to the other engineers at Aptera, is that they're not sitting, like, I was like, are you guys just sitting around waiting for funding? No, they're not. They're like, there's some things that are set in stone, which are obviously like those parts from CPC, the body parts and stuff, but there's other things like UI, some of the electrical systems and things like that that are still you can still change those. It's not too late to change those, and they are working on those and making those better while they're waiting for this funding to come in. And I think the funding will come in. You know, they seem very confident that the funding will come in because there's a known market, there's a plan to profitability. They have lots of interest. They just haven't had anyone actually, you know, write the check, but many people are interested. So, you know, I think we're all hoping that someone will that will get to the large funding fairly quickly. But they're, you know, like Chris just said, we're 9 months away from the time funding, and that's what, you know, he said like 4 months ago, and so we haven't found the funding. So it's whenever that happens. So I think it's early 2024 is like best case scenario, and I'm thinking like mid 2024, or perhaps even late 2024 is when it's happening.
We feel really excited about a lot of the investment possibilities that we've been talking to. I think certainly last year we were frustrated, you know, that it wasn't happening, that we weren't talking to the right groups. But I think, you know, kind of re-engaging, you know, or changing up the investment process last year has really got us inspired that there's a lot of people out there that want to support solar mobility and our path to production. They're excited that we have $1.5 billion in orders already. They're excited that we have, you know, a great intellectual property suite that, you know, innovates in solar and battery pack and body structures and, you know, all the cool things we're doing. And at the end of the day, puts a vehicle on the road that is so compelling in terms of efficiency, in terms of, you know, grid independence, in terms of how it will really shape the world that we'll see in the future. So I think it's exciting that, you know, the conversations that you and I are having are really getting traction, and I think you know, all those will enable us to ramp to production more quickly, including your support out there, joining the accelerator program, telling our story. But it's really our community that has helped us get to where we are, and we're just so thankful that everyone's out there to help. But the number one way you can help is just tell our story. So I'm sure we have lots of people on this call that have many friends that just haven't heard of Aptera. I mean, we're in kind of a little bubble here where I think about Aptera all the time. So we assume that people know. But every time we put out a new video on a different YouTube channel, we get a whole new audience. We're just surprised, like nobody knew us in that channel. Nobody knew us in that version. How did they not know us about us? You know, everybody's got to know about solar mobility, right? No. I would be surprised if more than 1% of Americans, you know, had even heard the name Aptera. So there's a lot of people that just have no idea that solar mobility can be a thing. So if you can tell our story, tell a friend, tell them to go to the website, send them a video link. You know, Chris McCammon and Sarah's team are just producing really awesome videos and great content. So if you can inspire somebody to just listen to our story, they may share with another friend, and that may not lead to an investment or a reservation, but, you know, just getting our story out there will influence this business model. And so please share all you can.
Thank you.
Well, trust me, all my friends have definitely heard of Aptera, and I'm sure many of you guys, your friends are tired of you guys talking about it. But anyways, okay, that's the end of the webinar. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a great day.